My name's Rob Gaudette. I'm with NRG, and I was the 2019 winner of the Industry Excellence Award in Energy. I'm here with Emeka Oyolu, the class of 2005, and he's the 2020 winner of the Industry Excellence Award in Energy. He's also the VP and Controller at Phillips 66. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about your career and the future of our industry. Let's get started. So tell me about your journey to Rice. How'd you end up getting or choosing to get your MBA? How'd you get started? We want to know how you got here.
I guess my journey to Rice started when I joined Conoco all those many years ago. And the Heritage Conoco Finance Leadership Team, we called it the Global Finance Leadership Team then, took personnel development very, very seriously. And they came to me and said, we think you have the potential to be a senior finance leader sometime in the future, but we think you need some broadening. My undergrad was in accounting. I'm a chartered accountant, which is the equivalent of CPA. And they wanted me to go to business school to move me away from accounting and more into finance. So they said, we think that would be good for you. And we know an excellent school just down the road from where Conoco headquarters is, and that was Rice. And that's really how my journey began. And no regrets, Rob, no regrets.
Well, that's good news. And I'm glad you ended up at Rice. It's a great place. And I look back on my time and enjoyed it. So when you think back to your time at Rice, what part of the experience had the most impact on you personally, professionally? What was it that really made the difference for you 15 years ago?
So class of 2005, we joined the program in 2003. And the program then was very team-centric. So what made the biggest impact on me was working with teams, because then I had this huge realization that from here on out, my success or the lack of it was now going to be determined by individuals who I may or may not have any authority over. So it was this whole awakening about the importance of being able to work in teams, and the awakening that influence as much as authority is required to be successful. So that made a huge impact on me and has probably stayed with me. And it's true, because as you probably very well know, Rob, business today it's less and less about the individual and more about what you can accomplish with a whole group of people collaborating together.
I 100% agree. I was explaining a couple days ago to somebody that, people, after you've been in your career for a long time, you really stop doing and you really start leading, right? And teams have become an important part of everything that I've done in my career. And, much like you, Rice was the first place that I really got exposed to a team of people who, I couldn't put my thumb on. We all had to kind of move together and coalescing a group of people who you don't necessarily, to use your words, have authority over has been a challenge. So given your experience at Rice around teams, has that differentiated you from others kind of along the career path? Like, I know for me, it's made a big difference, but for you, has that made a difference for you in your career? And is that why we're sitting here today? Or is that at least a piece of it?
I'm not sure I'd use the adjective differentiated me from the pack, but what I will say is that where I work at Phillips 66 and ConocoPhillips before that, what we often say is it's not just what you accomplish, it's how you accomplish it. And what we tend to tell people is that, you can be the smartest engineer, smartest finance person, but if people don't want to work with you, then your career will only have a certain runway. So collaboration is heavily, heavily encouraged. So I guess that sort of reinforced what I picked up at Rice.
Perfect. All right, so let's go a little further back.
Okay.
What made you decide to have a career in the energy industry?
That's probably that's an easy one. So I'm originally from Nigeria. I don't know what the exact statistics are today, but I think at the time something like 90% of GDP, of Nigeria's GDP, was from the oil industry. And if you wanted to have any chance of a decent living, you went into the oil industry. So that's the science behind how come I ended up in the oil industry.
And so tell me about it. What have you enjoyed about working in it? And you know, what are your favorite things about being in energy? And then, you know, what are the things that you kind of learned through just to make sure we could still have fun in the business? I've got a list the same. I just wonder what you thought.
You know, so I've been in the business now almost 30 years, and the breadth of the industry never ceases to amaze me. It's the breadth, it's dynamic, it's complicated. You know, we say the oil and gas industry, we make it sound like it's one thing, but it's not really. There's exploration and production, there's refining and marketing, there's supply and trading, just the breadth of it. And then the other thing about the industry that I just find just never ceases to amaze me and just excites me when I think about it every day is each one of the different components is sort of unique from the other. Exploration is very different from production. Production is different from refining. They're all different, but they're all related. There's this interconnectedness that runs through the whole value chain. So that complexity and that breadth is, I think, very, very attractive. And the other thing about it I like is it's a very dynamic business. You know, there are no 2 days in the energy industry, I think, that are the same. You know, I think back to 2014. 2014 crude prices were approaching 100 or breached 100. And last year, I think it was in April or so, we had negative crude prices. So, I mean, just the breadth, the complexity, the everything about it is just exciting. After 30 years, I still am charmed by this business.
I completely understand that. For the folks who are, you know, students or recent alumni or never even heard of the energy industry, and they think about, you know, much like in my business, I think about power. You flip the lights on, it's on. For your business, at the end of the day, we're getting oil and we're converting it to a bunch of products. One of the primary ones is gasoline, right into the back of a car. Can you talk to people, or can you explain to an electricity guy how the industry over your career, like what the starting point was, how things were different then, you know, whether it was where we leaned on for production versus where we are today, and, you know, any of those three parts of the industry. Like, I think people would be interested to hear from your perspective, how's the industry evolved? Like, what's the big drivers of change that you've seen in your career? Because in your spot, you've got a very interesting perspective, being able to see kind of over all of the nuts and bolts and the finance of the whole business, whereas someone may have a very, very tight view around technology. You've got a big broader base to kind of help people understand. So, you know, some of our students or future students at Rice, or even alumni, are younger than you and my career, not to put a, you know, pin in it, but talk to them about how the industry's evolved over time.
Sure, would be glad to. And I think when I think about that, probably the best way to sort of highlight the evolution in the industry, I remember it was within a month or two of having started with Conoco in Lagos in Nigeria. We had there's this gentleman who flew in from Houston to come talk to the business unit there. And then the whole what the industry seemed to be engulfed with and preoccupied with was the whole concept of peak oil. So if you go back 20, 30 years, the industry was worried about exhausting reserves of oil and gas. That's what we were concerned about. If you fast forward to today, I don't think there's anybody who is concerned about the world running out of oil and gas supplies today, even with the growth in population that we've seen over the last 30 years, and even with the growth that we expect to see over the next, say, 30 years, because of technology. So technology has been able to access reserves that we never thought we could access before. So, I was reading something just yesterday, I think, that said, with existing technology, we can probably double our reserves of hydrocarbons in the next 10 years. So that's not the concern anymore. It's not running out of reserves of oil and gas. That's really not the concern. I would say, if you fast forward to today, it's an entirely different concern. Now, before I say that, let's keep in perspective that I think that the energy industry, from my perspective, and I'm first to admit I'm biased, has an immense amount to improve the standard of living of billions of people around the world. Because, you know, the fossil fuels that we produce is what has made it possible for us to, like you just talked about, you know, we put on electricity and we don't think twice about it. We put gasoline in the car, we don't think twice about it. You know, just the quality of life that so many people have enjoyed over the last century or so is because of this industry. But having said that, Larry Fink, who is the BlackRock CEO, he writes this annual letter to CEOs. You've probably read it,
Yep.
Rob. The one he wrote in February, the 2021 letter, which was published in February. He said something I thought was fascinating. He said that the number one concern for investors right now is climate change, and that climate risk was now investment risk. And he also went on to say that it doesn't really matter what business you're in, but your business model in some form or fashion is going to be impacted by your preparation for the move towards a lower carbon. I'm not sure if it's lower carbon or decarbonization or net zero carbon, but nonetheless, there's a lower carbon future out there. So the challenge, I think, for the industry today has moved from, are we running out of hydrocarbons, to how do we participate in this energy transition that everybody, including the BlackRocks of the world, are signaling that we're going to be headed. Maybe the journey's even started. How do we participate in that energy transition? That's what I think the challenge is. So if you just think about that juxtaposition from being worried about reserves to now no longer worrying about reserves, to worrying about how the energy industry contributes to helping mankind get a grip of the 51 plus billion tons of greenhouse gases that we emit every year. That's the challenge, I think.
And so I read the same letters, right? Where I'm in the industry, I get it. I would wonder if you would agree, or if you could expand on, if you do agree, that the people best suited to help figure out that conundrum, right? I remember peak oil. I remember all the concerns, and then, you know, we've seen technology just increase production kind of across the spectrum, and, you know, energy poverty is a big deal, kind of to your earlier point, right? We can't just turn this stuff off. There's a lot of people whose livelihoods, whose health and safety all depends on it. So it's not a question of going from we're going to run out of oil to we're never going to use oil. The question is how do you produce and use oil in a way that works inside of the parameters of the challenges of global climate change? My thought, or my discussion would be, those most likely to come up with the technological solution, to think through and find the long-term answer for the globe, are in our business. I would make that, and I would wonder what your view on that would be.
Oh, you know, I agree, and I'll probably say it a little bit differently. So when I think about it, I don't know that it is any one individual's or any one body's responsibility to solve the climate issue, because I think it's I'm not quite sure that there's been such a business problem of this scale in the history of mankind. So I think it's going to take an all hands approach, all hands on deck approach. I think it's going to take government intervention. It's going to take good policies. It's going to take the business world to come together, the private sector, the public. It's all of the above. But one thing I will say is that, you know, in my almost 30 years in this business, one thing that's become crystal clear to me, Rob, I think this is what you were getting at. Those of us that work in the energy industry, the engineers, the geologists, the finance people, all of us, at our core, we are all problem solvers. I haven't met a group or collection of people who are more qualified to solve problems, no matter what they may be, than people in this industry. So while I don't think the responsibility sits with just us, we certainly do have a part to play And I do think we have a collection of some of the finest problem solvers you have on the planet to help tackle this problem that I think the whole planet needs to be thinking about.
I absolutely agree. And, our best assets across the industry ultimately be our people, right?
Absolutely.
And continuing to develop and grow a set of professionals to face the problems that have changed over the last 30 years of our career. That's the most important thing we can do. And given that, this is a little bit of recruiting on your part for everybody else, to include me. If someone was interested in pursuing a career in energy, what would you tell them? And what advice would you give them?
I would say jump in. I would say if what you're after is personal and professional growth, mental stimulation, a feeling of accomplishment, if you're willing to learn and be taught, if you're willing to collaborate with others, if you're willing to solve problems, if you're willing to watch yourself grow, what's there not to like? Because this industry will give you an opportunity to test all those things I just talked about. And again, I don't know about you, Rob, but one of the things that I treasure the most about any job I have is the variety of it. So if you're one of those who likes different things, trying your hands at all sorts of different things, like I said, we call it the oil and gas industry, but it's very broad. So you can have several different careers within the oil industry. So it's engaging, it's rewarding, it's a huge learning opportunity, it's a huge growth opportunity. I struggle to find any reason to tell anybody not to come into this business. But again, I'll preface that by saying, I'm biased, but it's a fantastic industry to be in.
I 100% agree, and I am also admittedly biased. So you've been in the business for 30 years. You're an accomplished man, not only professionally, but personally. What accomplishment in your career, or I'll give you in your life, are you most proud of?
Oh, my kids. It's my kids. I've got two of them, and they couldn't be more different, but it's my kids. They're what keeps me going. That was an easy one.
Yeah, it was kind of a layup. I would expect nothing less out of most people. So how old are your children?
One boy, one girl. My son's 23. My daughter is 21, going 40.
Got it. Okay, so back to the career for a second.
Okay.
When you think over your career, what was your favorite project that you worked on? And tell us why it was your favorite. Like, what made the difference? Why does it still stick out over 30 years? What's the thing you're most proud of and enjoyed working on the most?
I've got, so about 6-7 years ago, I had a developmental opportunity. I'm a finance guy. I was taken out of the finance function and was thrown into our marketing business here in the United States. And for me, it was the opportunity to work with all these creative people. So just for context, so we have the refining business that refines the crude into products, and then we have the marketing business that gets it out to customers, if you will. And in this business, a lot of creative people who manage the brands and figure out what we need to do to get rid of all the gasoline the refiners turn out. So I showed up from finance, very financial background. There were all these really, really creative people. And basically, I found it fascinating to watch how they went about their business, how they thought, because they thought differently than I did. And while I was there, we actually worked on setting up a joint venture with a mid to small sized family-owned business that had really cracked the nut on how to sell retail gasoline in the middle part of the country. And we were able to marry their competence with the balance sheet strength of the company I work for, Phillips 66. We came up with this joint venture idea that has really, in the last 7 years, taken off. So the opportunity to engage with the creative people in our marketing business and to help play a role in forming a new joint venture for me was so much fun, and I wish I could do it all over again.
So let's explore that a little bit. The similar experiences with, you know, going from finance, and I'm trading on my side, but finance on yours. How have you taken that experience where you've worked with the creative teams, with the marketing teams? Like, how has that affected you now as controller? Like, has that changed your mindset? Like, has marketing gone from something that is a cost item on the sheet to something that, look, there's actual value creation? Like, how has that evolved since that time? And now as a very senior leader in your company, you know, how does that play out?
I mean, it just changes. First of all, it broadens your perspective. It gives you an appreciation for the value that all different components of the business bring to the table. It gives you an incredible amount of respect for people who see things probably different than you do. So, for example, let me see if I can bring this to life. So, before I went into that role, if you'd asked me what would drive gasoline sales the most, with my finance background, I probably would have told you it's the price of gasoline, right? Well, not really. Consumers are after something entirely different than just price. So the mom who has her kids in the car, who's going to fill up her tank, is worried about safety, right? She's looking at how well the safety of the place, how well lit the gas station is, right? And with time, people get to know if convenience stores have, you know, clean bathrooms, right? Are the pumps for pumping gasoline, are they fast? You know, so that working with those people taught me that there's so many different dimensions to selling gasoline. With my finance background, I would have just gone straight to price. It's not just price. It's how clean is the gas station? Is the service friendly? What's the state of the convenience store? So really, it made me understand, or helped me understand, that there are lots of layers to not just selling gasoline, but the business, and gave me a greater appreciation that lots of different people around the table helping solve a problem come up with the best solution, which sort of reinforced what I was taught at Rice so many years ago about the value of teams and the value that everybody on a team can bring to the table.
Got it. All right, so let's turn the lens. Let's look forward.
Okay.
What do you want to do with the rest of your career? As much as I want to go play golf, that's not going to happen. So I wouldn't let myself. But what do you want to do? What's the next 10 years look like for you?
You know, one thing that I think I started off by saying that when I started at Conoco, we had a leadership team that invested a lot in people development. That means a lot to me. I have a passion for developing people, and that's one thing that I know. And you know, from here on out, I want to spend as much time as I can giving back the way folks invested in my career along the way. So that's one thing that I really want to spend some time on.
Perfect. That's a great segue to, as you know, alums, as industry excellence award winners, you know, how can you and I and our colleagues who've also, you know, been across this industry, you know, 100 times, and you add it up for 1,000 years, you know, how do we better engage our, you know, the students at Rice? How do we work with the young alumni? Like, how do we help develop and create the opportunities that you and I honestly had 15, 20 years ago? You know, what do you see as our roles to further the success of Rice, further the success of our city, further the success of the students?
You know, I think a couple of things, Rob. So first of all, I think the starting point is making ourselves available. I think, you know, we're all busy. Everybody's busy. Everybody has, you know, schedules that are jam-packed. But I think the starting point for engagement is just making ourselves available as much as we can. That's what I try to do. It's never really convenient, but I think it's absolutely worthwhile. So that's the first thing I would say. And one of the things that I've concluded over my career is that one of the most important things you need to have on any career journey is good mentors. So making ourselves available to people and to talk to and to mentor over time, because I think what I would hazard to get, at least for me, is true for me. If somebody asked me what was most impactful on my career, not the education helped, the hard work helped, but for me, I'd probably point to having good mentors along the way was probably the differentiating factor. So I would say make ourselves available to try and mentor the young folks as much as we can.
I think that's a great point. And like you, people have made the difference in my career. Rice is a great community of folks and a great school and lots of good people who are always willing to help. But along my career, I can literally point to various people who made that difference. And your challenge to me and other of our fellow alums to go out there and be that person and help drive our students or our future alumni forward is good for them. It's good for Rice, and ultimately, like we talked about earlier, we need them in our industry. We need smart people to help drive things forward in the future. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed talking to you. Someday I'd actually like to do a fireside chat next to a fire together, but we know how that works. So I really enjoyed getting to talk to you, and I can't wait to see what's next. To all the viewers, we hope you enjoyed spending your lunch with us, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the Alumni Reunion Week 2021. Thank you all. Emeka, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.